Hello guys, and welcome back to this new video. So today we are going to talk about villains, the most evil, the most terrible, the most terrifying villains on earth. The history of man is full of villains since Cain and Abel. On closer inspection, the reason for this wickedness is always one of these: madness, lust for power, or blind loyalty to an ideology. So today, we can classify 12 villains of history organized in 4 categories: psychopathic killers, tyrants, bloodthirsty fanatics, and the famed. That is, those whose character was not really that of a saint's chance, but whose enemies transformed into black legends. The list could be much longer, but unfortunately we don't have all that time, so let's get started. Number 1. The Vampire. Elspeth Bathory, 1560-1614. Elspeth Bathory, the Countess Dracula, as this 16th century Hungarian noblewoman was renamed. She is considered the most ruthless serial killer ever. Cannibal, bisexual, seductress, diabolical torturer, vampire, and sadist. For at least 20 years, she tortured and exterminated more or less 650 girls. She lured the girls with the promise of a good job, but then had them tortured in the worst ways. Needles stuck under her nails if they didn't finish the sewing job. Iron marks on their faces if they ironed badly. Beaten savagely. Burned. Thrown into winter fields. Naked and wet to freeze. It seems that the Countess bathed in the blood of these slain girls, because she believed that that would guarantee her eternal beauty. According to historians, however, the black legend that surrounds the Countess, however sadistic and cruel, is exaggerated and the result of the plot of her enemies. Number 2. Jack the Ripper. In 1888, Jack the Ripper disseminated terror in the East End, one of the most infamous areas of London. Yet the first serial killer in history still does not have an identity, despite 1,000 hypotheses, including a sensational one. It was perhaps Albert Victor, grandson of Queen Victoria, who had contracted syphilis in those places. Did he want revenge? All 5 victims, indeed, were prostitutes. The killer killed them by cutting their throats, but then attacked internal organs, removing them with almost surgical expertise. That is why many times policemen have thought of doctors being involved into this. The mysterious murderer will become famous with the name of Jack Ripper. Suspicions also fell on Amelia Dyer, known as Jill the Ripper. Dyer, however, was specialized in children. She adopted them to pocket money and then killed them or left them to starve. Number 3. The True Blue Beard. Gilles de Rais, 1404-1440. He was so bad that he ended up in a fairy tale. It seems that the story of the bearded uxoricide by Charles Perrault was inspired by the French nobleman Gilles de Rais. De Rais, however, did not behead any wife. He raped, tortured, and killed dozens of children. That doesn't make me feel any better. Former hero, related to the noblest families of Brittany and raised at the court of the future Charles VII of France, he was initially a war hero alongside Joan of Arc in the fight against the British. With the death of the Maid of Orleans, he devoted himself to a very different activity, that is, death. Retiring to his lands, he gave himself, according to the records of the trial that led him to death sentence, He devoted himself to polygamy, but above all to pedophilia. It was his helpers who got him young peasants and beggars to abuse and then cut their throats. Number 4. The Cannibal Dictator. Idi Amin Dada, 1925-2003. For 8 years, he was the president of Uganda and is still considered one of the most eccentric and bloodthirsty dictators in African history. It is estimated that around 300,000 Ugandans were killed during his regime. Former boxer, he distinguished himself for the sadism of some tortures, like cutting off penises of those who did not want to collaborate with him. And among many accusations that were leveled against him when he was alive, there was also that, which was never documented with certainty, of him being a cannibal and having eaten the bodies of his political opponents. Number 5. 3 dictators. Few people have negatively influenced history like 3 tyrants that marked the 20th century: Stalin, Adolf Hitler, and the fascist Mussolini. Number 6. The Caliph al-Hakim bi Amri Allah, 985-1021. Having become Caliph of Egypt at the age of 11, he soon got rid of his tutor, the eunuch Barjuan, by killing him. It was the first of an infinite series of purges with which he reaffirmed his absolute and arbitrary power. He persecuted Sunni Christians, Jews, and Muslims. He was Shiite by demolishing churches, confiscating land, forbidding heterodox rites, and arresting those who did not pray as he said. He came to destroy in 1009 the Church of the Holy Sepulchre in Jerusalem, a symbol of Christianity. He banned beer, honey, grapevine, banned gambling, music, and chess, and prevented women from leaving the house and even looking out the window. Those who transgressed were punished with death. Furthermore, he had himself proclaimed a god and abolished Sharia law, the law based on the Quran, effectively replacing Allah. Too much even for Muslims. Number 7. The Torturer. Thomas de Torquemada, 1420-1498. He spread terror throughout Spain. Head of the Spanish Inquisition, he ordered the torture and death of hundreds of people, branded as heretics. The indefatigable Dominican combined an uncompromising faith with a certain sadism. Jewish converts suspected of lying by changing their religion just to save their lives. Women accused of witchcraft, and many Muslims paid the costs. On all, according to the dictates of the medieval Inquisition, he imposed severe torture. His power lasted until 1492, when the new Pope Alexander VI convinced him to retire to a convent. From there, however, he managed to obtain from the Spanish Isabella I of Castile and Ferdinand II of Aragon the green light to expel all Jews from the Spanish territories. Number 8. The Divine Marquis Donatien Alphonse François de Sade, 1740-1814. In the name of freedom, the Marquis de Sade justified the most extreme sexual behaviors. In his opinion, everything, including evil, was lawful as long as one allowed oneself to be guided by the natural law of pleasure. Consequence of this argument were practices that we nowadays call with the name sadism. A distant descendant of Laura de Noves, the woman sung by Petrarca, In his verses, Donatien Alphonse François was born in Paris. A brilliant military career and a marriage did not prevent him from becoming a champion of libertinism, pushing himself to all kinds of depravity. Precisely for these excesses, he spent long periods of time in prison and in asylum. Here, he devoted himself to writing. Number 9. Osama bin Laden, 1957-2011. Mind of the attack on the Twin Towers in New York. Osama bin Laden is the most recent incarnation of the very bad in the West. A fighter in the Jihad, the Islamist holy war, he has long been identified by the US as a pivot of the axis of evil, a series of countries supporting anti-Western terrorism. Of Yemeni origins and from a wealthy family, Osama bin Laden graduated in economics in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Having come into contact with radical Islam, he abandoned the lifestyle of a viveur and approached the armed struggle by organizing a series of attacks on American bases abroad. The cause of war on the West became his reason for living, and in 1988 he founded Al-Qaeda movement, the Base. Hunted for years, he was killed in Pakistan on May 2011. Number 10. The ferocious Saladin, 1137-1174. Actually, Saladin was a two-faced character, ruthless and ferocious, as handed down to us by the history written by the winners, but also magnanimous and loyal. Like many leaders, he was responsible for merciless actions against the Crusaders, but he was also merciful and fair to the weakest. Dante, in his Divine Comedy, reserved a special treatment for Saladin. He did not put him in hell, but in the limbo. He is the only Muslim, together with Avicenna and Averroes. Number 11. The Scourge of God, Attila, the king of the Huns, who invaded Italy in 452, was a skilled negotiator who was one step away from becoming a member of the imperial family. To pass it on as the incarnation of evil was the Church, which had attributed the merit of having stopped its advance in Italic land. In reality, Attila had led the Roman Empire against him by aiming at his wealth, by hoping deep down in an insertion into a Roman society. The idea of a peaceful coexistence between the two peoples came to him after his system. The idea of a peaceful coexistence between the two populations came to him after the sister of the Western Emperor, Justa Grata Honoria, offered to marry him. The marriage was wrecked, and this was the pretext for the invasion. To stop him definitively was a banal bleeding from the nose, which suffocated him in his sleep during the first night of his wedding with Edilco, one of his many wives. Number 12. The Myth of Dracula, 1431-1476. In Romania, Vlad III Dracula, the devil, is a national hero. He is considered a father of the country. The propaganda made him a bloodthirsty monster. Much of what it is said about him derives from the sensationalist tales spread right at the end of the 15th century, which then inspired the vampire protagonist of Bram Stoker's novel Dracula. In truth, though, there is only that he was actually ruthless, even if we must take into account the historical context in which he lived. Then, ferocity was a warning to everyone. Enemies, first of all. The same practice of impaling, which has handed him to history as the Impaler, was not introduced by him but already by the Crusaders. in the 13th century. Like others in his time, he used it as a way to make opponents retreat from forests of impaled bodies. Now, as said in the beginning of this video, we could have mentioned many other villains, but the truth is, that's it. We have had enough. This has been quite sad, but also very interesting. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and that's it. So comment below, let us know your thoughts. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and of course let me know what you think. Let me know if you would add anybody else to the list. Let me know if you would change the order. Let me know all your thoughts, and we'll talk soon. So guys, that's it. Bye bye.